We have to all stop doing this. This is not good. If you spin in the middle of the track, don't rejoin the track with cars coming. Hockenheim has been an absolute wreckfest for me, starting on pole for this race with a 140.1 though, so hoping to escape the carnage, heading up towards the first corner, and the car who started in P2 is just going to run us completely off of the track. Just ignore the fact that we're there, push us into the grass. Fortunately, we managed to gather the car up and get back onto track just behind him, so minimal, I mean, that could have been much worse for us. Looking for a move up the inside, not actually looking for one, but just putting our car there so he sees us and knows that we're there. He does go a bit wide. Maybe he thought that we were going to continue through with that move, which we never were. Coming up to the hairpin, we don't go all the way wide. This was a decision I just decided to make. Ended pretty poorly for both of us. I did maintain my line. Of course, I could have opened up a little bit, and that probably would have saved both of us a lot of time. So as we are rejoining, going from first and second down to the pack, we're going to pick up a 4 times from this guy spinning backwards across the track, rejoin in P5, and going side by side with this black and white car. We do have the inside for the next corner, so there's not a ton he can do, and the guy behind us follows us through as well. Car number 3 behind gets a very wide line out of there, cuts back across and takes out the guy behind him, who was actually car number 1. So that's going to open up a gap behind us. So we're starting to not feel so much pressure from behind, which feels really good. Allows us to put 100% of our attention on chasing down these top 4 guys ahead of us. As the laps go on, we pretty quickly start to close up the gap to these guys. Meanwhile, behind us, car number 3 is following us through the hairpin, locks up his tires a little bit, which I'm seeing that in my relative, and I enjoy seeing those type of things, especially when it's somebody who ran you off the track at the beginning of the race. However, I guess I did go back into him, so I would call it even at this point. Entering back to the straight a lap later, and we are pretty firmly in the slipstream of this purple or pink and blue guy ahead of us, hoping that that can suck us closer and closer, and eventually put us in a situation to where we can look for a move. On this occasion, nothing is really going to happen, just following him around the hairpin right there and trying to stay safe and on the track. This carousel is my favorite corner on this track. You can treat it like a very, very slight double apex to get a really fast entry as well as a good exit. So it's a very special corner to me. Meanwhile, behind car number 3, oversteers on exit. He's going to slide out, and I guess he's not checking his relative, but he's going to rejoin the track, smash this Red Bull car off, and then as this Red Bull car goes off, he decides to rejoin as well, spins out as soon as he gets on the track, causing more mayhem, and there's people just wrecking everywhere. Great avoidance from car number 10 there to drive through the grass, and then we're just going to cut before we see what happens there to him. Car number 3 was pretty upset with our move into the hairpin earlier and threatens to report us and calls us dirty stupid. And I will accept both of those verbal threats, as I was being pretty stupid. It was a bit dirty, and it is reportable, so he's not wrong in any of those instances. Anyway, back onto the race, still running in P5 and chasing the same guy down. We have now both caught car number 6, and I believe all of us have, as a group, kind of closed the gap a bit to the leader, so it's sort of compressing up here at the front of the pack. Car number 6 up ahead, going very wide, cutting back, and he's gonna save his line there, but unfortunately get a little bit of a jump coming over that curb, and that is going to put him into a slide. So we will pick up that position, now riding in P4 and looking to actually fight for a podium with this blue turquoise periwinkle colorful car ahead of us. I don't really know what to call that. Back onto the front straight, we get a really, really good exit here in comparison to the car ahead, and that is going to put us pretty close by the time we come around to start the next lap. I believe he gets an off track there as well. His driving seems to be getting a little bit loose. I see him sliding around a bit. Perhaps his tires are going. And we're going to pull to the inside into the big braking zone here at the end of the straight into the hairpin, make it work, going really deep and not really letting him turn his car early for a good exit. Still does manage to slide ahead of us as we get a little bit of oversteer coming out of there. Really good run through here, and I felt like that was a clean move. Looking back at it, I guess we did touch very slightly. I thought he just oversteered it first. I got no force feedback for that. The move felt really clean, and I was proud about it. We would find out later that he was very upset about that one. In my head, though, I didn't really recognize that I had done anything wrong at that point, so I just continue on my race and looking to hopefully catch up to the 2 front runners and perhaps extend my position up to second. Now, we are pretty far, but as the laps go on, green starts to fall off a little bit, losing touch with the leader and then eventually losing slipstream to the leader, while we consistently put in decent laps, decent enough to close that gap up, and pretty soon we will be the ones soaking up the slipstream from the green car as he gets oversteer coming out of the final corner, and that is really going to solidify the fact that we're going to be in a battle here. Now, we have about 5 or 6 laps left at this point, I believe. He's driving off track into the first corner, getting a bit squirrely, hoping that his tires are feeling it. I've tried to be pretty safe about my tires ever since the slide at the hairpin on the first lap, and it does look like we are making some pretty decent headway, braking really early here as we are in the slipstream. Lock up from the green guy, or Roxy if you will, and that is going to see us slip right on through with a couple of laps left, hoping that we can catch the leader. I know that he's seeing us climb the positions in his relative and seeing the time difference get smaller and smaller, hoping that that will affect him enough so that he drives a sloppy lap and lets us catch up, perhaps looking for a move at the end of this lap. He does go very wide into the hairpin, cutting back for a good exit, but it's still going to net us a pretty good gain on him. Only a few corners left, and we are really wanting to put the pressure on him, flying through this corner, our favorite corner on the track. He gets on the gas a bit earlier. That's going to push him wide. You kind of get stuck on that curb if you don't get on it at the right angle, and I believe that's what happens to him here. Coming around the penultimate 2 corners, I don't know what exactly to call that, focusing on a really good run. We do manage to carry a lot of speed out of there, but it's going to fall short. The straight isn't long enough, so finishing this one in P2. Also had this conversation with the blue and pink guy. Pause it if you want to see it all. He was pretty upset that I didn't give him his position back. And to be fair, I probably should have. I didn't realize at the time that made contact. I also didn't have voice chat on, so I didn't hear any of this.
Well, Aiden, I reckon you got 2 decisions here, bro. Give me that position back or I'm going to report you. Okay, I guess you're going to have it stripped off you. Tell me, Aiden, how's it going to feel having second ripped off you as well? Right.
I'll keep you all updated on if I do get reported and banned. These were the results. Ended up losing 0.02 safety rating, gaining 60 I rating. I was car number 4 here, so I finished about where I should have. Pause if you want to see anything else here. Hopping into race 2, and you'll notice that we are all the way down in P17 to start the race with a 140.7. Really poor qualifying from me. And starting the race, car number 17 here behind, who's started 2 cars behind me, moves for a very defensive line. This green car just doesn't really care too much about that, sends him flying, and unfortunately we are going to be collected in that just barely and end up losing just about every position. I believe we head down somewhere in the ranks of P22 or 21. 19, the same guy would then go on to turn this man around at the hairpin, and then I would get jump scared as he's driving the opposite way around the track. Have never seen this in my life before. This was terrifying in the moment. That was my view. I just sit there in disbelief for a second until he tows his car, and then I continue on my way. Now we are firmly the last car on the track, apart from him, who is now in the pit lane as he has been towed. Up ahead, these 3 guys have a really rough little incident. Just going 3 wide doesn't really work there. 21 absolutely blasts through that guy who's in the middle of spinning on the track. By the time we make it through, we do gain that 1 position in another one from somebody else who towed. So I think we're around P19 at this point. I want to say 19 or 20. Coming into the hairpin, and we have begun to catch up to the cars ahead. This is actually 10 laps later after that first lap. All of the messiness that happened there. So we've been really just trying to churn out some laps, and eventually we do catch up to some people. Coming into the carousel, my favorite corner on the track, sending it super wide in this instance, getting a decent exit out. He goes up onto the curb. You don't really want to do that. It can be fast, but it's very hard to control. He then goes into the dirt a little bit, scrubbing some more speed off. So that's going to almost allow us to look for a move coming into the first corner. Just letting him know that we are actively looking for a move with that, and that we do want to get around. That we will be kind of aggressive. You know, I feel like that can get into people's heads. He takes a defensive line, and then he moves back, and then we show on offensive line. So we're kind of just trying to remain in his head. And really, I think I wasted a lot of time doing this. I just I wanted to have some fun driving and some mental warfare, but I think it would have been quicker for me to just put a shit ton of pressure on this guy, get it right up behind him, and have him make a mistake, or have him let us through, as we did hawk him down from about 15 seconds behind him. So he knows that we're faster, and it probably wasn't worth all of the showiness that we're putting on behind him. We continue our way around the track behind car number 22. Eventually coming out to round the track out, we're going to get a really good run through towards the carousel, look for a move up the inside, dive pretty deep, end up hucking up our tires, and this is the point where I realized, all right, I'm doing way too much right now. And funnily enough, as soon as I made that decision, the car ahead is just going to spin himself off of the track, oversteering around the final corner and giving us that position for free, completely free. So, well, not free anymore because we have wasted so much time behind him, but we do end up picking up the position. Car ahead, we never really catch totally, coming across the line for a pretty abysmal P17. Same place we started, so at least we broke even in that sense, but we should have really qualified ahead anyway. Unfortunate race, it happens. The two guys who finished in first and second were pros, and man, those guys were hauling ass. Very consistent laps. Their average was lower than my fastest. That shows you about where we are. Also back into C class at the moment. Hockenheim has been very unsafe. Third and final race of this session, starting in P5, I believe, with a 140.69. So once again, kind of dropping the ball in qualifying, but this lobby is not nearly as strong as the one before it, so we have a pretty good chance. The car starting 2 cars behind us sends it up in between myself and the car to my right, gaining both of those positions, so we lose both of those, and then we actually end up losing another one to this red and white car, so I believe that's us down into P8 at the moment. And coming through the second turn, the red and white car is going to take a tight line. We're going to respect his space and let him have a clean drive through. I just don't want any trouble right now. I would really like to get around the track on the first lap with no dramatics. He takes the defensive line into the hairpin. I take a pretty normal one, riding around to the outside. Pink car up ahead goes extremely deep, cuts back. We try to leave him space on the inside so we don't take advantage of the full track. Gets a really good drive out. No change in position for us there. Following this guy, continuing to do so. Wasn't really looking to send anything up here, but we end up almost going around the outside there and then just slowing down a little bit to make sure we stay behind. Ends up yielding us a really good run as the cars ahead get a little bit backed up. We move to the inside, he moves over, and we move over a little bit more, looking to make this move work. I don't think he was trying to block, it's just that wall comes in, so I think he was trying not to run into the wall. We do manage to gain that position, take a very defensive line into the carousel here, make that work for us, and up into P7 now, chasing down the pink antisocial social club car. It's a tongue twister. Coming around the final turn with a really good run, good enough to keep us attached to the car ahead. And by the time we come into the hairpin, we're not really under any pressure from behind. A little bit of a lockup from the car, 2 cars ahead. So hoping that that trend continues and maybe he ends up backing up to the point where car number 5 could look to make an attempt. And a lot of times when that happens, the car behind, which would be me, will be able to find a way to weasel through and gain one or possibly both positions while watching people fight. Back up to the hairpin, and the pink car actually is going to drive a little bit wide. It looks like he was trying to avoid the car ahead. That's going to slow him down a good bit, put him right in our sights. We don't really want to make a move on this guy, but he ends up overcorrecting coming out of that corner, so we do end up taking that position up into P6. The turquoise and silver car up ahead had a really rough run. He's fallen down a position, and whenever somebody starts to fall down positions, they start to get a little bit vulnerable, and I'm looking to make this move work as quickly as possible, keep that trend going, sending it up the inside of the carousel, taking an extremely tight line. He has to go around the outside, and we get the drive down in time. Coming out of there in P5 now, although we have lost a decent amount of time to the car ahead, I'm not too worried about it. I do believe I have enough pace to maintain a good gap to him. Next turn, or second turn of the next lap, and car number 5 sends it up the inside, does that very well, very cleanly, and he's gonna make that stick coming onto the straight. we are continuing to chase down the car ahead, and we now have a little bit less pressure from behind at the moment as they just made that little switch. Car number 2 locking up his tires coming out of the hairpin once again. I know that that's going to take a toll on his tires eventually, so I'm hoping that I can just maintain the heat in my tires to a good level and wait for his to kind of go off a little bit, maybe look to win just on outright pace after that. Eventually, he locks up his tires once again, almost make the move work here, end up having to tuck behind him, but we are right behind him, so in a really good spot to look for an overtake. Looking to make a move on the outside, which turns into the inside for the next corner. He's going to defend it, so we move to the outside for the next corner instead, hoping to get a good cutback. We managed to get it, but this little pinch point can be very dangerous. We actually slow down just a bit so that we can settle behind him, perhaps look for a move on this straight before the sweeping right-hander here. Not quite going to get far enough ahead alongside of him, so we end up sending it side by side instead into the carousel, and the outside here is not really somewhere you want to be, so I decide to kind of choose a middle line here, a center line, which doesn't allow the pink car behind to have too good of a run out, going side by side with him, and eventually we are going to slide in front just barely, maybe a few inches between our bumpers as he falls behind us. And we are now kind of leading this train, and we have lost time to, I think that's P4 ahead of us. I'm hoping that the cars behind share the sentiment that I can catch this guy, and if we all just work together, stay in a row, we can all catch this guy, and that seems to be the consensus, at least for the pink car, as he doesn't really look to make a move anywhere on me. Coming into the hairpin, and you can see they all just kind of fall in line behind us. We get a pretty decent run out of here as well, so definitely I think close up a little bit of time to car number 2 ahead. Firmly in the slipstream now, hoping that I can continue to soak that up, sending it very fast into the carousel. Once again, I like to take that as a double apex, just a very slight double apex, but I do find it gives me a better exit, and mid-corner I don't find to be super important unless you are fighting for a position there. So if there's somebody on your outside or inside, obviously you want the mid-corner to be pretty important for you and establish track position. Coming along to the straight on the next lap, and the line behind me has spaced out a little bit. The pink guy is still following me. I take a defensive line just in case it happens to come through, going side by side with him as he takes the outside, going to look to make it work. We go pretty deep and get a nice amount of angle, which will propel us for a decent exit considering how poor of a mid-corner we had. We actually managed to still gain time to the car ahead with all of that going on, so that was a win-win for us, hoping that the pink car will continue to stay behind us and that we can continue to close up this gap ahead. The 2 cars up in front of him are pulling away pretty sufficiently at this point, so it's really just a battle for the podium. He moves over for an extremely defensive line. We're going to try and hold him tight, and we managed to do so. Car number 5 takes advantage, going very deep. 2 locks up his brakes, and I end up making contact with him, as do some other people. He just kind of slides and then just continues across the track instead of turning, cutting off our exit, and we get extremely squirrely on the exit as our car loses grip, and we continue to press the throttle down, losing a position to car number 5, who made that whole corner work for himself very cleanly, taking a semi-defensive line in here just to make sure nothing funny happens from the car behind, and going to chase down car number 5 now. So still in P4, we've lost 1 position, gained 1 position, and the guy behind us is putting some immense pressure on us, taking a semi-defensive line into the carousel, not going all of the way wide, just to establish to this guy that I do not want to give this position up, and I am willing to fight for it. Hopefully, after doing that, he will just kind of settle behind us and let us drive our race. That wasn't going to be the case, though, because as we come onto the straight, I'm looking behind me, and I mean, he's pretty far back. At least that's what I thought. As soon as we hit the braking zone, I realize what's happening, though. I just see him pulling up way too fast. Stay wide. I actually pull to the left for just a second, let him send himself through as he locks his brakes and get a decent exit out of there. So here's my cockpit view. You can see I just stayed straight for a second longer, maybe half of a second longer, and that yielded us the maintenance of that position. He then rejoins the track, going side by side with car number 2, who was behind him, and then coming into the sweeping right-hander, car number 2 and car number 7 are both going to go very deep. The guy behind looks to get something done, but isn't going to get away with that as car number 7 sweeps across and knocks him off the track. That will give us a lot of space to run away with. You may have just seen a car pulled over to the side. Now that was this guy right here who actually made this move just about half a lap earlier for the lead as he parks it just past the apex. They both send it pretty fast through there, and then he ends up just oversteering onto the sweeping right-hander. Unfortunate for him, losing the lead of the race and falling all of the way down. Eventually rejoining the track and going side by side with car number 7 into the carousel. 7 makes it work pretty nicely for himself, going side by side all of the way through to the penultimate corner where he gains the lead. Beria number 1 looking to make something work, going up the inside of the final corner, not quite going to be able to get the drive down. 7 just barely pulling ahead, and Beria, very smart of him to just settle behind here and get that move done somewhere else. It wouldn't be too much longer, just a couple of turns as they come into the hairpin from Parabolica here, and he's going to send it all of the way up the inside. Fantastic braking from him, meeting the apex and getting out of there cleanly. So I am currently running in, what is this? 1, 2, 3. I'm currently running in 4th, and I noticed that Beria went behind me there, and I know how fast this guy truly is. So I'm really hoping that I can get ahead of car number 5, just to put a car between us, if nothing else. And number 5 making a mistake there around the hairpin. Beria now looking to close the gap to basically everybody, trying to get the lead there, making a beautiful move around the inside of car number 2, and he is going to now be chasing us down. He is let out of the gates. There is nobody between us, and I am doing just about all that I can to catch up to car number 5 here. As the laps go on, eventually we begin to reach the end of the race with about 2 or 3 laps left at this point, and hoping that car number 5 ahead will make a mistake. He does send it very deep into this corner, ends up oversteering, and we get through there safely. Unfortunately for Beria, he tries to make it work around, ends up still getting contact and losing about 1.5 seconds to me. So that was a pretty crucial moment, as if he had gotten around him cleanly, I definitely would have at least been having to defend on the last lap, which I believe is what we are coming up to right here. I've just got to make it work for one more lap and keep Beria behind me. I believe crossing the line, it was about a 2.2 second gap back to him. And I'll give you a little visual just so you can see what that looks like, and it's pretty far at this point, so I should be able to get around without too much of a problem. However, there is, of course, pressure in my head just knowing how fast this guy is. He is consistently winning races, consistently the top car in a lot of the splits I am in, so that is absolutely affecting me. Fortunately, we are going to manage to pull away. The gap falls down by maybe to a 1.8 or 1.7, so I actually drive a pretty decent lap. His tires are, of course, overheated, and perhaps he has damage from running into car number 5, but I'm not going to let that stop me from getting excited by stealing a P3 from that race. Pretty satisfied with that result, and this was our last race at Hockenheim. Here are the results for anybody who wants to see them. You can see we actually managed to gain both safety rating and I rating on that race. Felt pretty good. Feel free to pause if you want to look at anything else. We have a long way to go. Ultimately, we netted about -4 safety rating, like 4.0 safety rating, and -200 I rating on Hockenheim.